If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them, for Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
Portraits from the past. An ultimatum in God's name? If you do not do this, with God's aid I shall enter with power among you, and shall make war on you on all sides and in every way I can, and subject you to the yoke and obedience of the church and of his majesty. And I shall take your wives and children and make them slaves. And I shall take your property, and shall do you all the harm I can. The deaths and harm which shall thereby come will be by your fault, and not that of his majesty nor ours. Quick facts. The requirement was an ultimatum delivered by Spanish conquistadors when they arrived in the Americas during the 16th century. Indigenous people were required to acknowledge the authority of the Catholic Church. The text of the ultimatum was read aloud in Spanish or Latin to local people who did not understand either language. This was one of the most disturbing proclamations in the history of the Americas. As official declarations go, this may be one of the most bizarre. It is part of a proclamation known as the requirement, el requerimiento in Spanish, that during part of the 16th century, Spanish conquistadors had to read aloud when they landed in the Americas for the purpose of conquest. What exactly did the conquistadors proclaim to the local people, and why? Forced conversion to Catholicism. Soon after Columbus set foot in the Americas in 1492, Spain and Portugal each claimed sovereignty over the new lands. Since both nations considered the Pope to be Christ's representative on earth, they called on him to settle their dispute. Under the Pope's direction, the Church apportioned the newly found lands between Spain and Portugal on the condition that these two countries send missionaries to convert the natives. As the conquest progressed, the Spanish monarchy sought to legitimize the exploits of the conquistadors. The Spanish asserted that since the Pope was acting in God's behalf when he granted the lands to them, the conquistadors were free to dispose of the indigenous people and their goods and curtail their liberty. The Spanish drafted a document to inform the local inhabitants of the Pope's decision. The natives were required to accept Christianity and become subjects of the King of Spain. If they resisted, the Spanish felt entitled to wage a just war against the locals in God's name. Violence was excusable in a just cause, so the reasoning went. Spain therefore had to concoct just causes. Francis Sullivan, Jesuit professor of theology. Unjust, impious, scandalous. The Spanish crown had the requirement read to ease its conscience and justify the colonial conquests. The conquistadors often read the proclamation on board their ship prior to a raid, or on land to the inhabitants who did not understand European languages. Sometimes the document was read to the empty huts abandoned by terrified natives. This attempted forced conversion resulted in bloodbaths. For example, about 2,000 Araucanians were slaughtered in a battle in Chile in 1550. Concerning those left remaining, Conquistador Pedro de Valdivia told the king, 200 had their hands and noses cut off for their contumacy, inasmuch as I had many times sent them messengers and given them commands, the requirement, as ordered by your Majesty. The footnote reads, according to some sources, the requirement was abolished in 1573. End of footnote. The following is supplementary information. Timeline of events. 1492. Columbus arrives in the New World. About 1493. Pope Alexander VI grants the Spanish and Portuguese monarchies dominion over their claims in the New World. 1513. The requirement goes into effect. 1550. About 2,000 Araucanians are killed in Chile. 1573. The Spanish crown officially abolishes the requirement. Returning to the article. The reading of the requirement may have salved the conscience of the invaders. However, it did little to promote the religion of the Spanish. 16th century missionary friar Bartolomé de las Casas, an eyewitness to the requirement's effects, wrote, "How unjust, impious, scandalous, irrational, and absurd this injunction was! I will not speak of the infamy it caused the Christian religion." Chronicler Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo lamented that the atrocities committed against the indigenous peoples of the Americas gave them a very poor first impression of Christianity. Is God to blame for such atrocities committed by political and ecclesiastical powers, purportedly in his name? The Bible states at Job 34:10, "Far be it from the true God to act wickedly, and the Almighty to act unjustly." End of article.
During the 1970s, the preaching work was not recognized in Rwanda. When my family and I received a letter of invitation to go serve there, we were living a good life. We had some concerns, but praying to Jehovah and asking him for direction helped us. I discussed it with my wife, and we were both positive about it. We made a request for legal recognition in 1982, but instead, myself and 2 other brothers were thrown into prison. One day, on a Sunday, the Archbishop came to the prison and he announced, "Beware of those Jehovah's Witnesses." As a result of that, he raised the curiosity of his listeners. The prisoners wanted some explanations from us because they could not understand what he meant. Many began to join our meetings. The Archbishop was not happy. He grew even angrier, and in order to stop our activities, he told his close followers to beat us up when we attended the following meeting. 2 young prisoners approached us, and they said, "Today they plan to beat you up." When our meeting time came, we didn't show up. Another religious group came and took our place that night, so they were the ones who got beaten up. From that time on, no one disturbed us any longer. We continued preaching and attending meetings peacefully. After spending 2 years in prison, we were freed. Outside of prison, the brothers were not free to preach. Many more brothers and sisters kept being arrested and imprisoned. Later, I was put in prison again, and the imprisoned brothers rejoiced over my presence, saying, "We now have our circuit overseer visiting us." They were very happy. We started working together in harmony and preaching. Each one was assigned a territory. Some were discouraged, but I tried to strengthen and encourage them to hold on to Jehovah. Then, brothers from all over the world started to write to the head of state. Letters were coming in huge quantities. Those letters had a good impact because finally, one day, an announcement was made on the radio by the president himself, saying that he pardoned Jehovah's Witnesses. The people on the street started shouting at us, "Jehovah has won! Jehovah has won! He has won!" The work of Jehovah's Witnesses was legally recognized in 1992. Sadly, in 1994, during the time of genocide, some of our brothers died and others faced serious challenges. Some fled to Goma as refugees. I received the assignment to oversee the relief funds that were coming from Kinshasa.
If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them, For Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
My parents and my brother were killed. I saw that some religious leaders were involved in killing people in genocide. I couldn't believe how people who were previously living together friendly, now they start killing their neighbors.
How did you get contact with the truth?
So after the genocide, I was taken by my aunt, whose family were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I began studying the Bible with them. I was in a Live Forever book. I saw a picture of a priest blessing people in the church, and then he was blessing troops who were going to kill. But also I could see how brothers and sisters in the congregation, with love and courage, risked their life to take care of one another.
Oh, that's touching.
If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them. For Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
Now, Eugene, your family was not a direct target of the violence, but what other hardships did you face?
The economic situation was very difficult. My family had no money, and they could not buy food. I remember my mom, I can still see her lying on the bed in complete despair, not knowing what she can do for us children. The elders asked me to go to the Kingdom Hall, and when I arrived, they handed me 18,000 Rwandan francs. The elders told me that my brothers and sisters from abroad offered us this gift. So I immediately ran back home, found my mom still lying on the bed. I gave her the money. I can still see my mom crying because of the joy and thankfulness of what the brothers had done.
Excellent.
If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them. For Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
I was born in Congo. My family and I, we had to flee. There was a war going on. One thing I remember is the bombs and the shootings that were behind us as we're running. You hear people screaming too. Each day we live, each step we took, we knew that something was going to happen to our lives. We never knew if we were going to survive. My mom and I were the only one who survived. And that was one of the reasons we had to go to Rwanda. As someone who were raised in the refugee camp, I can tell you that the life in the camp was not easy. The hardest part was just seeing people facing hunger. And since I never had a big brother to support me, all these kids would come and beat me up, hitting me. I just felt like I was a victim. Even though there was all this sadness, I knew there was God out there who cares for people. So what I did was I started praying to God. Then I started going to the Catholic Church to look for him. At the age of 7, I saw these 2 women, because I came to Rwanda, they were witnesses, Jehovah's Witnesses. I was so inspired by their smile. And these women had like the Bible in their hands, and the tract they gave me was about paradise.
If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them. For Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you.
Iwacu bari abahamya ba Yehova, so Yehova nabagiyemo kwa kundi ugenda ufite amagaze tukajya kubwiriza ibyo nabikoze, ariko ibyari nkaho kugahato nako nabishakaga, so ukageraho race.
Chapter 20. If you go to war against your enemies, and you see their horses and chariots and troops that outnumber yours, do not be afraid of them. For Jehovah your God, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are about to go into battle, the priest should approach and address the people. He should tell them, "Hear, O Israel, you are about to do battle with your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted. Do not be afraid or be terrified or tremble because of them. For Jehovah your God is marching with you to fight for you against your enemies and to save you." The officers too should tell the people, "Who has built a new house and has not inaugurated it? Let him return to his house. Otherwise he may die in the battle, and another man will inaugurate it. And who has planted a vineyard and not begun to use it? Let him go and return to his house. Otherwise he may die in the battle, and another man will begin to use it. And who has become engaged to a woman and has not married her? Let him go and return to his house. Otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man will marry her." The officers should also ask the people, "Who is fearful and faint-hearted?" He should return to his house, so that he may not cause his brothers to lose heart, as he has. When the officers have finished speaking to the people, they should appoint chiefs of the armies to lead the people. If you approach a city to fight against it, you should also announce to it terms of peace. If it gives a peaceful answer to you and opens up to you, all the people found there will become yours for forced labor, and they will serve you. But if it refuses to make peace with you, and instead goes to war with you, you should besiege it, and Jehovah your God will certainly give it into your hand, and you must strike down every male in it with the sword. However, the women, the children, the livestock, and everything that is in the city, all its spoil, you may plunder for yourself, and you will eat the spoil of your enemies, which Jehovah your God has given to you. That is what you will do to all the cities very far away from you that are not of the cities of these nearby nations. But in the cities of these peoples, which Jehovah your God is giving you as an inheritance, you must not allow any breathing thing to live. Instead, you should devote them completely to destruction. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, just as Jehovah your God has commanded you, so that they may not teach you to follow all their detestable practices that they have done for their gods, causing you to sin against Jehovah your God. If you lay siege to a city in order to capture it, and you have been fighting against it for many days, you should not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. You may eat from them, but you should not cut them down. For should you besiege a tree of the field as you would a man? You may destroy only a tree that you know is not used for food. You may cut it down and build siege works against the city that is making war against you, until it falls.
naho wadukubiga mu gahanga naho wadubaga naho wadukeba ntabwo twari tumaze